Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Good morning, I'm Karl Fitzpatrick and welcome to Business Matters. Well, firstly, the Restart Grant Plus opened for applications this week. Eligible businesses must have experienced a 25% reduction in turnover and must commit to reopening and sustaining employment. These cash grants range from €4,000 to €25,000, and if you already received a grant under the first phase of the Restart Grant Scheme, you are eligible to reapply for a second tranche of funding. For full eligibility criteria and to make an application, go to wexfordcoco.ie. Well, over the past few weeks, we have taken you on a tour across County Wexford, highlighting some of the mesmerising and unique tourist attractions that are available across the model county. Our final stop on this journey is the Dunbrody Famine Ship and Kennedy Homestead in New Ross. And I'm delighted that Sean Connick, the CEO of the JFK Trust, has joined us on this morning's programme to discuss these popular tourist attractions. Sean, since the Dunbrody Famine Ship and Kennedy Homestead reopened for business, have visitors been flocking to these popular tourist attractions?
Good morning, Karl, and it's great to be with you. The good news is that they have, Karl, and we were projecting that we'd operate maybe on around 10% of the numbers that we had last year, but in actual fact we've hit around 30%. That equates to around 3,000 visitors. Whereas last July we would have had 10. So give you an idea of the level of the impact of COVID, which is that 70% international visitor, which we've lost across the project for July.
And of course, Sean, you have a huge exposure to the US market, don't you?
We do, and of course our three largest markets are the US market, the German and the French markets. They're three very, very dominant markets. They're backed up then by the UK and the Canadian markets after that. But, a large amount of our business is dependent on the tours, the international bus tours, the international CI, international travel, Abbey tours, and plus many, many others who bring in these, the large tour groups from the United States and from Europe. And, the loss of them at the moment is obviously having a huge impact on Dunbrody.
And Sean, it looks like it's going to be some time before we're going to see those tour buses back in County Wexford again with US tourists on board. So in the meantime, what are you going to do to adapt the business to the Irish staycation market?
We've been working very closely with our friends and partners in the industry itself here in the locality in the southeast with Visit Wexford, with our friends, of course, in Falch Ireland, Tourism Ireland, and all the other agencies in that. And what we've been doing is obviously refocusing our efforts onto the domestic market. We always advertise quite heavily in the domestic market anyway, but in this particular instance now what we're doing is we're trying to refocus our efforts this year because we know that the international visitor is not here. And so we're pushing ourselves out right across as many of the mediums as we can afford at the moment in terms of promoting Dunbrody and the Kennedy Homestead. And, we've seen the return for that in July. We've certainly had a very good response to the Dunbrody Famine Ship experience and a great response to the Kennedy Homestead. The Kennedy Homestead we've largely put down actually to that other tourism attraction that's popped up on the scene in the last year, and that's the new bridge, the Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy Bridge, and that has certainly attracted huge numbers of people to the southeast just to drive across it and take the opportunity then to call into the Kennedy Homestead. And so we're seeing a very good performance altogether in the Kennedy Homestead. So we've been very happy about that.
And Sean, for the benefit of our listeners that have never been down to the Dunbrody Famine Ship or experienced Kennedy Homestead, what can they expect?
Well, the Dunbrody visitor experience is a wonderful experience. If people haven't been before, it takes you back, really, it's tour guided, so it takes you back right to 1848 onto the deck of a ship that would have left the quayside in New Ross. It takes you through that whole experience that people would have had. We have a couple of role players and they play the part of passengers who are on the ship during that particular period of time. Overall, it's a very emotive experience, educational experience and historical experience. You get a context for Irish history, why so many people left Ireland, where they headed to. And then when you leave the ship, when you come back in off the ship, you come off the ship into our new Savannah landing point, which has been building on the relationship between Wexford and Savannah, Georgia, which I'm sure you're aware of, and many of the listeners will be, that has been established over the last 7 or 8 years. And we now have a Savannah landing point, which explains the links between the two. regions, Savannah, Georgia, New Ross, and different businesses that thrived at the time. And that takes you in then to the Irish America Hall of Fame, which celebrates the many success stories of the emigrants and the Irish people who left our shores and went on to make such huge contributions across the world in terms of politics or film or acting or plays, literature, and even the space race. So many, many things for people to see and enjoy and learn, and things that maybe they would not have been aware of before. But it's great for all ages. Of course, the Kennedy Homestead is, run still by a family member, Patrick Crennan. Patrick is usually on site for tours, along with our tour guides. And again, you're taken through the history of the three generations of Kennedys between the emigrant leaving and John F. Kennedy being in the White House. And it's an amazing story. And when it's told in that particular fashion, and when you're experienced it, been told by a relative, or when you're seeing the exhibition itself with some magnificent pieces on display and some very rare and wonderful pieces on display, it's very entertaining and a very interesting visit as well.
And Sean, on the topic of Savannah, how has that relationship and alliance developed over the last number of years, and what real tangible benefits has it brought to Dunbrody so far?
Well, if we look at the Savannah landing point, was a concept that we came up with many years ago, actually. And on one of the visits, I was in a position to present to them when they visited Dunbrody. And as a result of that, we moved forward with a plan to put the Savannah landing point in place. And we were supported in our efforts by a contribution from 5 different businesses across Savannah, Georgia. And Visit Savannah was the lead partner on it, so they were able to give us a financial contribution towards the installation. I know that yourself and myself travelled there 3 years ago, and we had a great experience in Savannah at the time, Karl. And links have been established, and they've been ongoing over the last number of years. And we saw the Outreach Campus open in Wexford as well at the end of last year. And I can only see it going from strength to strength.
Now, as the end of the summer approaches, many businesses across the tourism sector are fearful of what they consider could be a very lean winter ahead. I know that some of the tourist businesses will be closing for a number of months and others will be scaling back their operations. What are your own plans at this stage?
Well, at this stage, it looks like we will probably have to scale back to some degree. Again, it's dependent on visitor numbers across September. So what we decided was in July that we would operate on sort of the 2 months, July, August. We're now looking at how September is going to look and what the impact of the reduction in visitor numbers will be. And then we'll have to look at the overall restaurant function itself. And with the ship scheduled going to dry dock in October, we'll have to look at how we operate the project across those winter months, bringing us through to December when we normally would have a Santa Wonderland experience, and then into the new year. I think, like everybody, it's going to be a very challenging period. I think there'll be a lot of stop-start, and maybe a lot of business adjustments will have to be made literally every maybe fortnight or on a monthly basis. But overall, we will be doing our best to try and keep the lights on.
And Sean, in terms of government support, what was your assessment of the July job stimulus from a tourism perspective, and what would you like to see introduced to support the industry during those leaner months?
Well, I suppose, like everybody, we were waiting, and it ended up almost being it didn't end up almost, it is really an August stimulus, because July we were up and running, and the stimulus package announcement came at the end of July. Overall, we were very happy because we were not in a position to avail of the Restart grant, and we hope under the new structure that we are, we're hoping that there's a number of other measures that will be adjusted as a result of it as well, such as the online training voucher with local enterprise office. I'm hoping that at this stage the tourism sector may qualify in that particular area. The wage subsidy scheme is very important to us, and honestly, without it, I'm sure projects like ourselves and many others would not have been able to reopen. The continuation of that is very important. However, they have brought that right back, and that will have a serious impact on any decisions we make from September to December. And so I'm hopeful that they may have a rethink on that, particularly for the hospitality and tourism sector, because the hit of the reduction of about 40% in that will have a very serious impact on businesses like ourselves. We were also looking for some form of either low or no interest loans or grants. Now, again, we're not sure if anything's coming in that. The difficulty and the point I've been making, I've had the opportunity to address the National Task Force, and I've also keeping in touch with Fáilte Ireland, and I'm a director of via the Association of Visitor Experience and Attractions on the national level. And, we're feeding in the information all the time that urgency and clarity are two very important factors for us at the moment. There is an urgent need for clarity as to what or where, we're going in terms of the funding streams, the loans, if they're available, the saviour grants, if there's such a thing coming from or through Fáilte Ireland. They're particularly specific to the sector that we're in. We'd have liked to have seen a reduction in VAT. Maybe in the budget they'll adjust it. We certainly welcome the 21% rate down from 23%, but we think the 13.5% could go back to 9% or even 5%. That would also be helpful to us.
And Sean, looking beyond the pandemic, it was announced that the Dunbrody Famine Ship, along with the Visitor Centre, was a beneficiary of funding from the Rural Regeneration and Development Fund. Tell us about Wexfordia and how this funding will be used to benefit those attractions.
Well, this is really a huge investment in New Ross town itself, and it's a wonderful recognition of the work that the various tourism bodies have been doing in the town and the council over the last number of years in conjunction with Fáilte Ireland. So what happened in November was that we were formally announced as beneficiaries of a large grant under the Rural Regeneration Development Fund. The monies are coming from the department and also from Wexford County Council and Fáilte Ireland, and it's going to involve the upgrade of the Dunbrody Visitor Centre, both its retail and current reception space, and also a visitor experience in the hallways as you enter onto the ship. And there's another amount of the funds which are going to be invested in the ship itself. Dunbrody will go into dry dock in October. She'll be gone until about January. And, there's a lot of work to be done to the ship in converting her from a sailing ship, which is what she was built out, into an exhibition mode, and at the same time trying to maintain authenticity of the vessel. And then the third leg of that, and the third component part of that, is the investment in the Murphy building of the new Norman story. And that will involve the telling of the story of the founding of New Ross by William Marshall, incorporating New Ross tapestry and bringing the story right through up to the modern age with, we hope, educational and exhibition space, that will enable us to have an all-year-round attraction in terms of bringing people in the off-season as well as the peak seasons.
And of course, the overall project will see over €5.5 million invested into the tourist attractions in New Ross. What type of an effect do you think that will have over the next 5 to 10 years, Sean?
Well, with the figures, we based the figures on trying to double the visitor numbers in the first couple of years of the attraction. But the plan is under Wexfordia that we have a cluster of world-class attractions in the Hook Lighthouse ourselves in New Ross and in the Heritage Park, and that these attractions will boost the amount of visitors coming into the county overall, and that we would look at approximately 200,000 visitors per year taking into all of these visitor attractions, bringing the numbers up to approximately 200,000 visitors to New Ross, to the Hook, and of course to the Heritage Park.
And finally, Sean, in relation to the Greenway, New Ross is going to be almost a central point between Wexford and Waterford. Is Dunbrody going to get much of a benefit from that?
Oh, I would think so, absolutely. I mean, that would be, we see it as another huge positive for the project itself. And again, on the point we were making earlier in terms of New Ross being a tourism destination town. I happened to actually only be on the Waterford Greenway myself yesterday. I have a hand cycle, and we were down on it, and I was just looking at the volume of people. I cycled from the Waterford WIT to Kilmeaden there, and I was just looking at the volume of people there, and I've done the Kilmac to Dungarvan and all of those small towns and villages, the benefit that they've reaped. We would be fairly confident that Dunbrody and the other businesses in and around the town of New Ross are all going to benefit greatly from what will be a really attractive greenway.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Sean Connick, the CEO of the JFK Trust, and I would encourage all of our listeners to support the Dunbrody Famine Ship, the Kennedy Homestead, and all of the wonderful local tourist attractions that we have access to.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
South